Good evening, everyone. My name is Maciej Godlewski, and on behalf of IB Exec, I would like to thank you for attending tonight's webinar. We are very excited to have Sarah Stambouli be the presenter tonight. And Sarah is a top national career coach and also a Columbia MBA, and she brings a wealth of knowledge about LinkedIn and how to use it practically. So we're very excited to have her here tonight. But before I hand it over to Sarah, who will also introduce herself, I would just like to go over a few logistical matters. First of all, we will be muting everyone's mics just to preserve the sound quality. Second of all, you can ask questions on the control panel on the right in the questions box, and we do encourage you to submit any questions you have during the presentation because that will make it more interactive and make sure that the webinar is suitable to your needs. And Sarah will be answering them as we go along. And lastly, we will be sharing this webinar with you in a recorded format, which we will include a link to in an email that will go out a day or two after the webinar. And with that, I would like to introduce Sarah and hand it over to her. So please enjoy the webinar, and thank you so much.
Can be an incredibly helpful tool in a job search. And what we're going to focus on today is a little bit of the technical uses of LinkedIn, but we're also going to be talking about some of the different decision points about business etiquette and what's the best way to handle different situations within LinkedIn. And I very much encourage you to, type in questions, chat questions, and participate in the poll that we'll be doing. And we'll either answer your questions as you ask them, and we'll pause from time to time as well. So I hope that you get involved, even though it's a webinar. So I had been asked to tell you a little bit more about myself and my services, and after I got my MBA, I worked in corporate human resources at Nortel Networks and Morgan Stanley and Cantor Fitzgerald. And then my business school, Columbia Business School, called me back and asked if I would run alumni career services for them a few years ago. So I went and did that and loved it. And then I, a couple of years ago, went out on my own and have been working as an independent career coach and also doing a lot of work for the alumni of a lot of the top graduate schools. And I love work, and a good part of my practice is helping job hunters, quite senior level job hunters and some more recently out of school, find new roles quicker. And a lot of the area of my help is helping people access the hidden job market as well as the posted job market that IB Exec gives you a good access, gives you a more tailored, efficient version of the official job market. And then using the two together, trying to reach out to employers whether or not they have jobs posted makes for a full job search, and that's the part that I can be particularly helpful to people with. And so clients come to me, and we work on all those stages of the job search. So I'll be giving you lots of examples of real situations where people have successfully used contacts on LinkedIn to land a new role. So I think it'd be a great time to hear from you all. Could you start the poll when you get a chance?
Sure, and I will be starting a poll right now for everybody. And the question is, my current situation is, and you can actually select one of the choices. I'm not working right now, and I'm in full-time job search, or I'm working full-time now, but I'm also looking for a new role, or I'm not looking right now, but want to develop my network, Or you can choose, I'm not looking right now, but I want to develop a new business. And you can select whichever answer applies to you. And we'll hold it open for a few more moments. All right, and we'll be closing out the poll right now. And overwhelmingly, we got a response of 65% for the first answer, which is I'm not working right now, and I'm job search mode. And the second runner-up is 26%, which is I'm working for now, but I'm also looking for other opportunities. So that is the answer to the first question. And just to follow up with that with the second question is we're going to launch the second one and the last question for tonight's poll. Is my LinkedIn is answer number one. I don't have a LinkedIn account or barely have one established. Answer number two is I have a profile and some connections, but I rarely use it. Answer number three is I have 50+ connections, but want to use LinkedIn more effectively. And the third, and the fourth and last answer is I am a master of LinkedIn, but I can always learn more. And we'll have the poll open for a few more moments. All right, looks like almost everybody has responded. And we're going to close the poll off right now. And the answer overwhelmingly is to the third answer, which is 64% people have answered I have 50+ connections. I want to learn how to use LinkedIn more practically and efficiently. And the second runner-up was the second answer at 21%, which says I have a profile and some connections. So that is those are the polls for tonight.
Okay.
Here you go, Sarah.
Okay, thanks everybody. That makes it easy that you're definitely have a majority in certain situations. So it sounds like a lot of you are not working, which is tough. I think you're very smart to be getting as much help as you can with your search, because it will really pay off for you to be searching as effectively and efficiently as you can. That's actually much more important, in my opinion, than the state of the economy, because somebody who's really the best candidate they can be is going to do all right, even in a tough economy, and I think the reverse can be true as well.
I don't know. I mean, your return may not be that simple.
I'm hearing someone on the line. Are you guys too? Okay. So here we are at LinkedIn, and I'm glad to hear most of you have an account set up. I'm going to use my account because they don't have sample accounts.
I'm supposed to be muted, but I wonder if it's
is it possible that someone isn't muted? Anyway, I'm hearing a little noise in the background. Okay, so the first thing, of course, is to get a good profile set up on LinkedIn. And one of the things to keep in mind in doing your profile is that you want to be characterizing yourself as much as possible in the role that you want to get. So you don't want to be only describing your past role if you have a summary, but also be describing the role that you're looking for in the future. So if you want to move into a slightly different area, you might make your summary be a combination of what you've been doing and what you want to do. Find a way to make it true, but be sort of slanting you in direction. Another thing to keep in mind is it's very good to put a picture up if you can get a good picture where you look professional but also very pleasant. And so it's actually quite important to have a smile and look kind of like a fun, nice guy or woman, because one of the things we'll be using LinkedIn for is to ask people, you'll be asking people to meet with you or getting friends to ask people to meet with you for an exploratory meeting or informational interview. And often they'll look you up on LinkedIn, and you want to look like you'll be fun. You know, you don't want to look so serious that it'll look like it might be kind of hard work to have a coffee with you. So those are a couple little things to keep in mind when you put your profile together. A few other things, I definitely wouldn't. You certainly don't need to have. I wouldn't say mine is an exemplary profile for someone looking for a typical corporate or organizational job. I have made an effort to use every possible feature on LinkedIn as an example. But I think the basics are to have a short summary, probably a little shorter than mine would be good, maybe just 1 or 2 short paragraphs, maybe 3. There's also no need to have a lot of detail about your job. So what I have here for Columbia Business School, I think is a good amount of information to have about a job for a person in a typical role. Definitely, of course, your education, and you all have great educations if you're in Ivy Exec, so you want to definitely be getting that all in there. And some of the other things that people you want to make sure to do is to think about whether recommendations would be helpful to you and what recommendations. So it's not crucial if you're in a typical corporate or nonprofit organizational role that you have recommendations, so don't worry if you don't. It's much better to have none than to have the wrong ones, and the ideal recommendation for someone in a traditional corporate role is to have it be a boss or a client, and the more senior the better in general. So you kind of, we don't want our moms recommending us or grandpa or people that work for you exclusively. So you definitely might want to think about bosses or clients who are pretty serious people, but who are on LinkedIn. They have to be on LinkedIn to recommend you, who have, spoken very highly about your work and think might be willing to do a favor for you. And so getting a good, well-written recommendation from a heavy hitter certainly cannot hurt at all in your profile. If your job involves sales or business development, or you have your own business, it's very important that you have recommendations. But again, think through who you want to have on there, and don't just sort of randomly ask for everybody. So that's something to keep in mind. So that's pretty much it, I think, in terms of the profile. There's a couple of little tips I'd like to suggest. One is that you go into the settings, and you a couple things I recommend people change when they're in job search mode, or in general probably. So when you come into the settings here, you see I recommend that people make their profile public. There's no reason not to, and I recommend that you don't put any personal information in, so there's no reason to not do. What is your status visibility? And I would, sorry, that's not the one I meant. Whoops, I apologize. There's a couple things here. There we go. This is what I meant, the status updates. So let's say you're deciding what picture to put up, and you're putting up a picture, and then you're putting up another picture, and then you're putting up another picture, and you really probably don't want the first thing everyone you know to be thinking is, wow, 17 times today. Likewise, if you're busy rewriting things, it's not doing anything for you to know that you changed some mundane detail of your LinkedIn profile to get blasted out to everyone you know. So I recommend that you don't have these updates come out, and you click no there. Now, when you get your new fabulous job and you're announcing your change in status with your new job, I might, if you can remember, click it back on again right before that goes out. There's one other thing that I would recommend that you take a look at here. In general, there's not a lot of concerns about privacy on LinkedIn, but this one here is not my favorite. I personally wouldn't want someone to know I've been looking at their profile, so I'll click that to know as well, because, you know, you might be looking for professional reasons, or you might just have a great big crush on someone and feel the need to look at their LinkedIn profile night and day, and nobody needs to be knowing that. So there's a couple little things to think about before we get going. Now, I'll move on now to the contact section, the connections, because this is the exciting part. So first of all, I'll talk a little bit about network statistics. Now, normal people do not have 641 connections, and don't think that should be your goal. And by the way, I don't know all of them. I just have a hard time saying no when someone asks to link into me, and I always think, oh, I'll unlink to them later. You can unlink to someone and they won't get informed, but I never seem to get there. But it is a great example about how many people a person has contact with, that a person could have 641 connections. I think it's pretty odd. But what's amazing is this number, the 2 degrees away number. That's the magic number. So someone I know, or who knows me, the 641, and some of them know who I am, and I don't necessarily know who they are as well because of the roles I've had. This 104,000 is someone they know directly. So theoretically, if people are linked into you, they should be willing to introduce you, not to everyone they know, but to a reasonable number of people they know. So theoretically, I have 104,000 people on this earth that someone I know might introduce me to. And that's a pretty good segment of the people that I might want to meet anyway for professional reasons. So let's say, who knows 641 people, let's say the most you could hope for is 150 or 200 because you actually know the people. You still see that this would be a pretty sizable number. The 3 degrees number, that's most useful for the fact that you can see their profiles if they're 3 degrees away. It's often quite difficult to get an introduction to someone 3 degrees away, but not impossible, and we'll talk about how that works. So this is just to convince you to put a little time in here, because when you figure out the kind of organizations that you really want to work at, you know, it's very exciting when you realize someone you know knows somebody at them. So one of the ways to build up your connections more quickly is to import your contacts in and link them up to people. Now, this is the one thing on LinkedIn where you can get into a little trouble. So I always suggest people to be very careful here. So I have already uploaded my contacts, and they're going to show in a little bit. And I've already done this, so it's only people I don't know too well that are going to show up. And there's a couple ways that most people do this. If your contacts are in Outlook, you want to do it on the computer that Outlook is on. If you have your contacts in a webmail program like Gmail or Yahoo, you can do it from any computer. And if your contacts are in some obscure, weird, proprietary work email thing, you might have to export them into Excel and then upload them. It's not always so easy, but it's really worth it, because there will be some people that you wouldn't have thought of that will come up in that download that could know the people that you want to meet. So when you upload them, be very careful, because this button where it's select all is often checked, and the one thing you don't want to do is accidentally send an invitation to every address in your email book, including people that aren't on LinkedIn, and your ex-boss and your ex-girlfriend, and etc. So what you would do is you'd look through the list, and you would see who has an in by their name, which means they're in LinkedIn. And if I thought you ask yourself, let's say Stephen Absek, do I know him? Will he recognize my name? Will he be pleased to link into me? Is there no big issue there? Is there no special reason I want to send him a personalized note, etc.? And then I would go through and I would click everyone who knows me well, definitely will recognize my name, that I don't have any special reason to kind of be extra solicitous to. And I might do a mass invite to those people. Then there'll be some people that I just won't want to invite for whatever reason, because I don't feel comfortable. I'm not sure that they remember me or any reason. And then there'll be people that I definitely want to invite but are very important contacts for me professionally. And I might choose to send them a personalized note. So I might just write down their name and then later send them a personalized note so that you're warming up the relationship while you're linking into them. And so this can be, depending on how easy the technology works, very easy or kind of a pain, but I recommend that you force yourself to go through it anyway. Those of you that are young and have already done this on Facebook, it won't be a big deal at all. Another thing is to make sure to join any groups that apply to you. Obviously, you want to join your university groups, undergrad, even some high schools have groups. Another source that can be a great source of contacts are companies you work for. They have alumni groups. So, for instance, I worked at Morgan Stanley, so I have the Morgan Stanley Active and Alumni Group. If you join a million groups, you can hide some of them. So not all of these groups show up on my public profile because it can just sometimes look a little weird if you join 6 trillion things, and you might want to it might dilute away from your fancy professional and corporate groups, so you might not want to have them all show. It's another thing to think about, not super important. You can even put them in order of prestige as well. And I know it sounds a little snobby, but that's a little bit the way the world works. So you can see, I have them in a little bit, this micro office thing, there's some little shared office space I use, and they wanted me to join their group. I don't think that adds to my prestige, so I don't have that one showing, but just want to be polite. And I didn't actually go to Tuck, but I did a webinar for them. I better take that off. And so those are the things to think about with your groups. And so now we're ready to start using it in a practical way. Now, let me just check in. Are there any questions yet? Does anyone have any questions? You guys are all set? All right. Feel free to make little comments along the way, like hurry up already or slow down. That will help me out too. Okay, so let's start with.
Hey, Sarah.
Yep.
Oh, I actually believe there are some questions in the question box. So I just wanted to make you aware of those.
Okay, maybe we're not seeing them where we are. Questions. Okay, apparently we're not seeing the questions. So can you maybe read them to me?
Sure. And I'll monitor them from now on. So one of the questions we had was, my position was eliminated in January, and I am in full job search mode. What should my status say on my profile, if anything, especially about the situation?
That is a great question. I recommend, there's a couple things to think about with your profile. Let me look a bit here. So there's 2 things. There's your headline. That's the thing below your name, and that's a little separate from your last job title. So this is what they're going to see first. So they can't necessarily tell whether you're employed or unemployed from this. So I would say I'm strategy associate, or I'm a human resources manager, or I'm a chief financial officer, or whatever it is that is the job that you want to get in the future, assuming you've also done that job. I would characterize yourself as that in the present. So I'm a chief financial officer. I happen to be unemployed, but that's what I am. So you kind of people want to put you in a box, pick the box yourself, and I would put that here. So I wouldn't say anything about being in transition. I would just say, come up with something that, it's not always that easy to figure out what you should say, but to put that up there. So this is what I am. But if, let's say I was still in my old human resources career and I was unemployed, I would say that I was a human resources director or something like that. Or I probably wouldn't say vice president because it sounds a little weird, but I might say that if that was my last title. And then I would have my summary describing my background in human resources, not mentioning my employment status one way or another. And then what the difference would be is that this job here, this owner at Stamboli Career Consulting, it's in the present. It just wouldn't be, I would have a job that looked like this, and it would just be over. But the first job you would see would be my last serious job, even if there was a bit of a date gap, at my last serious organization, if that's what I was looking to do. Now, if you're doing something, it's the same issue really with your resume. If you're doing something now that's something, but it's not as prestigious as what you were doing, or not as relevant to what you want to do in the future, actually might be as much the point. You might choose to leave it off. And it sounds funny, but I actually suggest you look at it both ways, like type it in one way and type it in another way and see how it looks. But in general, I think it's better to have a gap and have something relevant and strong as the first thing they see. I hope that answered the question. And I'm sorry we're not seeing the questions are not coming through for some reason for us.
That's no problem. And we also have maybe, one more question as well. We actually have two questions that are very similar to each other, so I can just put them into one question. So an attendee of the webinar asked about how far back should you go asking for employer recommendations. This person left the company in 2005, started his own company, but he's wondering whether it's too late to ask for a recommendation. And another part of, second part of the question is from another user who actually asks if it's okay to turn somebody down for a recommendation, or what is a good etiquette about how to do that too. If it's somebody who who asked you for a recommendation, and can they tell whether you recommended others?
Okay, those are good questions. About the first question about how far back you can go and ask of, say, a former boss or client to recommend you, I think 2005 is not too far at all. Same with a reference. If they had a good opinion of you, and you could just say it, maybe you could acknowledge it in your request. So by the way, when you're asking for a recommendation, I recommend that you reach out to the person in the warmest possible way. So if you normally call them, I'd call them. If you normally send them an email, I'd send them an email, not through the LinkedIn system, and say, I'm looking for a new role right now, and I've been thinking about my career history, and I so enjoyed working for you at Morgan Stanley, and I think it would be just really helpful to me if you would consider writing a recommendation for me on LinkedIn. I don't know if you're familiar with that process, but I know it's been a few years, but it would be great to see one coming from you. I could even, draft it for you if that would help a little bit, or help you, send you a couple points to help you remember what we worked on together. And they can always say no, but it would be great. And then while they're writing that recommendation, they're going to be remembering how much they loved you and what great work you did, and maybe that they're spending that time where great you were. I enjoy writing recommendations for people that I genuinely liked working for. I feel good about it. It's like a little free, like money to charity, but you don't have to, pay anything. And then the other one about turning down a recommendation, that's an awkward one, to be honest. I've never been asked that one, and people have asked me for a recommendation, and I say, yeah, not a thing, but I say no all the time because they haven't done work for me. And I just say, oh, goodness, you don't want a recommendation from me, I say. You should only have recommendations from your bosses and direct clients, in my opinion. And so then this person puts back and said, I didn't even have a high opinion of this person, saying they wanted a personal recommendation. I say, oh, I just can't. As a career coach, it's just, to me, I don't agree with your friend who said to get one, and I just don't think it would help you at all. So I'm not going to do that. I don't do, it's not what LinkedIn's for, in my opinion. So if you weren't their direct boss or client, I'd fall back on that one. If you were, then I would just say, oh gosh, I would just say, oh, now's not a good time, and just, suggest someone else they might ask, or just, it's tough. I mean, it's like being asked to be a reference, and, it's kinder to say no if you can't give someone a good reference. So, but I would try and figure out some situational reason why you're not the best person to do it.
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay, so so there we are, and don't sweat the recommendations on your end. But a nice thing to remember is, in the future, when you do some great work for someone, and they're like, oh my God, that was fantastic, thank you so much, what a fabulous job you did on this. That's a great time to say, I saw you were on LinkedIn, and we're linked. Would you consider writing a recommendation for me on LinkedIn about this? And usually they're all up on you at the point anyway. And sometimes people will even offer, can I do anything for you? And that's the time to ask. So make it easier in the future. So, okay, so now let's get to a job hunting situation. So while I'm going to talk about some other examples using using LinkedIn to access the hidden job market, let's talk about a little bit how you can use it to supplement the unhidden job market. And so let's say you are on Ivy Exec and you decide to look for a job, or they're sent you an email with some jobs, but we'll set that up. So let's say you've done some targeting and you're looking for a strategy job at companies like Google in New York City, where I am. So we type in Google for the company name, and then we don't know the exact job title, so we might skip that, and we might just put strategy. So there's not going to be that many in New York because they're not out in New York. You know, they're not quite headquartered here. So let's say we'd go there, and then maybe we do a little geographic limitation here and put in New York, and let's just see what's on. I mean, it's not going to be that many on Ivy Exec. See what we get. And look, you'd think I'd practice this. There we are with quite a few jobs, actually, with some kind of strategy focus. So I would take a look through and see, obviously see what you're really interested in. But I think that the entertainment industry analyst job looks fantastic. So I'm going to take a look at that. And I do. And I see that it's in New York. They want an MBA, which I have. And they want someone with, well, let's say I'm a little younger, all right? And this is my thing. Okay, so I've got what they're looking for more or less, and I want to get this job. So I definitely go ahead and apply the traditional way and tailor your resume and do whatever else they ask you to do. And then assume it's going nowhere, because even though you're extremely qualified in such a direct competition, most people's resumes they're not going to have their resume picked. So what else can you do? Well, you can try and find another way into Google to get to meet the hiring manager. So here we go. And I would recommend that you go into advanced people search. So we're on people here. There's advanced. We're going to click on it. This is where I want you to be hanging out a lot on LinkedIn when we're looking at the hidden job market as well. So, okay, well, we know what we want. We want a job that currently work there to start. We could go to, if we got stuck. Location, I would just put your zip code in, because the default is a 50-mile radius, which is enough to get pretty much all of New York for me. I'm here in Chelsea. And I might put in my keywords, which, what were they? Strategy and sales. What else was that job about? Operations. See what we get. Someone who's got those in their profile. And I'm going to, I can do this sort later, but I always like to sort by relationship, so the people I have a closer connection to come up on top. And I'm going to hit search, and some people come up. So now I'm when you're, it's really great when you have at least a second-degree connection. First degree, even better, but theoretically, I knew somebody at Google. I actually do know people at Google, and they're not coming up because they don't have those keywords in their profile, or they're not coming up first. And I deliberately put those in so that most people don't know as many people at Google as me, so I have to try to make this a little more realistic. So, so this is, sometimes you've got to click on people to know if it's what you're looking for. So sales operations at Google before, now something a little different. So he's a possibility. And I know him through Amy Patterson Slade, and I happen to know she's a recruiter at Google, but she also knows me, so for not through a recruiter relationship. So that could be helpful. This is another recruiter at Google who has a little bit, she's totally the right recruiter, as you can see, sales strategy, and operations candidate. And even though this is an analyst job, it would be in that department. So she would be a very good candidate for me to reach out to. I know her again through Amy Patterson Slade, so that would be my connection. And then here's Alex Barza, and I think he's really good looking, and of course I'm pretending I'm meeting this, so I want to meet him for a number of reasons. And he went to Columbia Business School, as did I. Look at that. I know him through some different let's say Amy is out of town, I've got another way in. Now, of these people, I might contact either one of them. I think either one of them might be willing to introduce me. Now, but I don't know them well. So how would I go about this if I wanted to meet Alex? I'm just going to leave his picture up because I like to smile. And my assistant here thinks he's cute too, so we're being very silly here. What I would do, literally, if I wanted to meet him in my situation, I used to work with Joanna. I don't know her terribly well. Arvin, I think, was a short-term, just came and saw me when I worked at Columbia, so I don't know him well either, but I've definitely seen his name a few times. And I think he would probably introduce me if I am. But I don't know them well, and they can't characterize me as well as I would like. So in this case, what I would probably do is contact them and ask them to introduce me, and I would explain why. I think somebody's unmuted again. If somebody could mute. Could everyone check they're muted? And then I would actually write the email for them. So like say Joanna, I would probably draft a quick email pretending I was Joanna, written to Alex, not knowing how she knows him, but assuming that it's just averagely friendly relationship, saying, Dear Alex, writing because a friend of mine, Sarah Stambouli, who's a real star and a real star analyst, researcher, or whatever, it would be the case. She also has an MBA from Columbia Business School. I know her this way. She's really great. And she'd really like to meet you because she's interested in X, Y, and Z. So the key in this email is to be stressing her relationship with me as much as anything else. And also, I wouldn't go on and on about how great I was, because she wouldn't go on and on about how great I was. She would just say, you should meet her, here's why, she's great, in a fairly casual way. And I would describe my skill set exactly how I want it described, but in a kind of mellow, more casual conversational tone. And so what I would write to Joanna was, Joanna, hi, I see that you know Alex. I'd really like to meet him because he's in this area, and I'm really interested in that area of Google, and I've been talking to some people about it. And would you consider editing this email I started for you below and forwarding it on to him? So it's almost no work for her. She just has to change the tone and throw in a couple personal things and hit send and find his email address. And in those cases, when someone's introducing you that way, it's very unusual that they won't meet with you, especially if you cite something specific about Alex, why you want to meet exactly him, cite something about the relationship between you. Oftentimes, people will meet with you because their friend asked them to and raved about you, more than because you're really qualified. So the more you stress the person introducing you and that relationship, those relationships, and not your skill set quite so much, just one or two things about you, the better you'll do, in my experience. In the other cases, I would reach out to that recruiter, Amy Patterson-Slade, but again, I would still remind her, and I might write the email for her. Now, if it's someone I know very, very well, I don't know either one of them very, very well, I might just phone and ask all kinds of questions directly. I actually do know someone at Google who just isn't in this area, so in that case, I would genuinely phone her if I was trying to get into Google. So that's an example of how I would try and get some connections. Now, if I keep going, you'll see there's all kinds of people with some connection. So in this case, I have some choices. So I might reach out to more than one person. I might, if I had somebody I knew well, I might actually try and get the exact name, ask her to track down the exact name of the person hiring. And then I might do a search on that exact person's name in the people search to find out if anyone knew that person directly. So these are some of the different ways that you can do the detective work. So it's a combination of which amongst Adam and Nina and Alex and Sashin, which one is closest to where I want to get, some combination of that, and how comfortable I feel with the person connecting us. So here the person connecting us is Matthew Huberty. I don't know him quite as well, and I see this person's very young, so he might not be at the hiring level for me. Maybe he is, maybe he isn't. And so think about that, actually, when you put your picture up, that you look the age you want to look, and that it really be, in other words, like I have pictures where I look 10 years older or younger than others, and really think about what that first impression is. That was a great example. I just dismissed this guy because he looks so young in the picture. But, of course, I am old, even though I'm pretending to be young in this example. Okay. So it's the same process as what we just described with using an Ivy Exec job to use the LinkedIn job section. And again, the LinkedIn job section, depending on what field you're in, may or may not be helpful to you. But what's great about it is it automatically tells you what we just did by hand, which is, you know, if I found a job, if that same job was on, it would automatically show me the connections without even having to think it through. Go about the same thing is to go into companies and just look at the company instead of putting in those keywords. So I can just look at Google and sort of think about it that way as well. So Kendra, and I know Amy, they didn't come up in that search because they're not in sales operations or strategy particularly. Kendra's in a very technical role, but she's a very close friend. So she might actually still be my way in, and she's really helpful. So then there's all kinds of other little things that may or may not be helpful to me. So I see who the new hires are. I see who some former employees are in case I know one of them very, very well. I can see who was recently promoted or had a change. If it happened to be someone I know, then that can be, you know, congratulations could be in order. These are just a few more names. And there's kind of little fun things to see here. So you can see, you know, what schools send the most people there. The median age is the median age on LinkedIn. It's not actually the overall median age. And there's a few, you know, more pieces of information here that can be helpful. And when you look, don't forget to hit this more. So I have, there's going to be a lot more people that I can connect to that might be better than the person on the first page. So don't forget to keep looking if there's a big company. And it gives you lots of choices to think about the best way in to try and, you know, hunt your way down to that job. So, you know, this guy, I'm not so sure what he's about, so I might take a little look and see how I know him and take a little bit more look at his background. So that's really one of the best ways to use LinkedIn. Now, this is the sort of typical technique for using it in conjunction with an existing job. So the job you could have heard about anyway, and you're trying to find connections. So the connection could help in a few ways. Hopefully they would talk you up to the hiring manager. You can get through to the hiring manager and get yourself introduced and get yourself a meeting. At the very least, if it's someone you don't know well who's scared of them, like let's say that the hiring manager is someone they don't know and they're quite junior and the hiring manager is quite senior, they could do something quite minor, like literally just when the guy's not there, run and put your resume on their chair. You know, it could be a more passive. So I did get one more question in, which is if targeting senior level positions, is it good or bad to have jobs from the past, i.e. entry level? I think it's fine to go back right through your history or not go back. I would just think about how it helps you. So if some of your entry level jobs were at prestigious companies, or let's say you start in technology and now you're not in technology, but technology is helpful for the career you're going to, then putting a job way from the past that you did at IBM in a more programming kind of role, even though it was junior, could be an ad just to see like, oh, they do have a technical background. So I think it really is a judgment call in terms of how far you go back. So that would be that. Any other questions? Okay. Someone's asking a question about recommendations and coworkers' recommendation. I'm not a big, that's a judgment call about getting coworkers to recommend you. So it's sort of a 360-degree referral, your boss and your colleagues and your employees. Theoretically, it's a good thing, but I think that they dilute the more senior ones, which to me are going to be a little bit more powerful. But that's my opinion as opposed to being like a right or wrong thing. And someone's asking about a lot of recommendations in previous jobs, but none in current role. I think that's normal because in your current role, if you ask for a recommendation, for instance, they're going to think they might think you're job hunting unless you ask it just right. And so I think it's very normal that people get recommendations when they're job hunting, and that's usually between jobs. So I don't think that's too weird. It could be a great reason to ask, say, somebody senior who left your firm. Might be great to ask them to recommend you because, you know, they'll keep it to themselves, and I don't know. There's a few different ways to look at it, and I wouldn't worry about the consistency between how many recommendations you have from each role. But obviously, the more senior and not too far back, it just has a little bit more weight to it, a little bit more power. So the biggest value for LinkedIn to me is looking at the hidden job market. So in that example earlier, I talked about looking for a strategy role, a sort of strategy and research role. Well, I said strategy. So what I recommend that people do is that they look at what their job target is, independent of jobs that are published and posted. So if I'm looking for a strategy role, where do I really want to work, whether or not they have a posted job? And if I make a list that includes enough organizations that will have, what we say is you want your job target to have 200 positions in it. And let me tell you what I mean by that. Not 200 open positions. That's not going to happen so often. But 200 positions totally. So are there 200 strategy associate positions in New York City that have a bit of a research focus to them? Not open positions, there might be someone doing it, but 200 people working in a role like that. I think there is. Maybe not in doing entertainment research, that might be pushing it, but definitely in general at my level. So if that's my job target, that's big enough. A research role with a strategy focus, with a sort of financial services background at my level. There's 200 people doing some kind of job like that, like the job we saw at Google. So I might come up with a list of organizations that I particularly like to work in. So I might want hedge funds. I might want some other place I could do. I might want a corporate department, a corporate strategy department. So I'd make a list of, maybe I prefer a corporate strategy department, but my second choice would be the hedge fund role. So to write a list of what your job targets are and get some organizational lists and start to figure out what department or division of that company those jobs are in. And then try and get in to talk to the hiring managers, whether or not they have a job today. Because if I get in and talk to the managers that have, say, 50 or 100 jobs under them, it might not be 50 or 100 managers because they might have more than one job, the chance of some of them having some turnover in the positions reporting to them in the next couple months is really higher than you think, quite high. And then we could throw in that they may know people that are hiring for jobs like the one I'm looking for. So in that case, let's say I'm looking for a role as an entertainment researcher. I would just go into advanced people search, and I might look for, let's say I had a particular industry in mind, well, I could just say financial services for now, even though Google isn't financial services. I do know that. But a lot of those roles are in financial services companies. So, and I might put in New York City, and then I might experiment a little bit with keywords. So I might just put strategy and business development, or strategy and product development, or a strategy and research. So I would just put research. And just see, and then I might put hedge fund. And just see what happens and try different searches to start to learn who you know that might be a connection into a company that you would be interested in. So as you can see, I've got quite a few second-degree connections to people that have those words in their profile. So whether or not they're exactly in a position to hire me as a researcher, analyst, strategist, I would take a look. So Paul Diamond, what do I know? Let's take a little look at what he's doing. So I know him through Charles Miles is my brother. So that's a pretty good connection. So I might call my brother up and say, could you introduce me to Paul Diamond? And he might say, oh, dude, he's not hiring. And I say, oh, I know. I just want to talk to him and have kind of an informational interview at this point. And let's say I get in there. He might have some colleagues that are hiring. He might be thinking of hiring and didn't mention it's my brother, but then he meets me and he's so excited. And if you meet with enough people, some of them are going to be very impressed with you and want to help you regardless of whether they have a role, and some of them are going to have a role, and hopefully some of them will be impressed with you and have a role, and that's how the hidden job market works a little bit. So we're running. We don't have too much time left. I want to make sure I cover all your questions, and I see one that's a great question to answer now, third-degree connections. So third-degree connections are interesting because they're a long shot, but they're not impossible. The one benefit of third-degree connections is at least it gives you a name, so you know exactly who you want to meet. So in my old search, if I kept looking down the line, the person that job at that Ivy Exec job almost certainly reported to was on there. They were a third-degree connection. So it would have been a bit of a work to get myself introduced that way, but not impossible. So let's say I'm looking I'm trying to think of a company where I won't know anybody, where I'll only have a third-degree connection. It's got to be something small, but I have to have heard of it. That's always a tough one. Well, maybe I'll look at it a different way. I'm going to go back to that original search. And I put in strategy and sales and operations and Google. So the key to the third-degree connection is that the connection between you and the second-degree connection and the connection between the second-degree and the third-degree connection are both very warm. It's rare, but not impossible. So in this case, getting all these group connections, I'm trying to remember if group comes before third. No, okay, there we go. So let's say, I think the person I actually was talking about might show up right here. Well, I don't think this is it, but let's say Laura is the one I want to meet anyway. So in this case, I want to meet Laura, and it's an interesting thing here. I know a ton of people that know someone she knows, so I have a million ways to try and get in, and one of the reasons is Laura knows a million people, 309, and I do too. So if I look, what I would do in this case, kind of an unusual case that I have all these choices, what I would do is I would look who I know really well on this list. And I would pick someone that's my buddy, and I can just call up and be like, hey, can you hop on LinkedIn and look up how you know them? I can't see how they know them. They've got to get on LinkedIn and look. I mean, they may know, but they probably won't. So let's say I might choose to make that person Marissa Mackey, who I think I would feel comfortable asking that favor of. And I'd say, Marissa, you need a computer. Can you hop on and see how you know? I really want to meet this woman, Laura Balkowitz. How do you know her? So Marissa might say, oh, it's my really good friend. Why? In which case I'd say, hey, could you introduce me to your really good friend? And she'll maybe, we can chat, and she'll introduce me to this person. Or she could have that conversation. There's a number of ways it could happen. However, Marissa might say, oh, that's my old boss who fired me. I'm not calling him, And so then you take a break and you look again. I might ask Dina Lou Van Lang. I would feel comfortable asking her, see how she knows them. So that's a way to do it. It's a little roundabout, but it happens. And in fact, I have a client who I was suggesting this to, and he saw a job that he was just so excited about, a tiny, tiny place. and he had a third-degree connection through a good friend. The friend introduced him to the person who knew the person, and he had a conversation with that guy. That guy had a job for him also. He got his introduction, and he got his meeting with the person he had in mind in the beginning, and it turned out the friend who was in a similar line of business was also wound up to be a great contact. That happens all the time. So I'd keep that in mind. And there's one more question I think I'll jump to because these are great questions. For senior level people, what is the value here? And it's a little less helpful at very senior levels because there's maybe a lower percentage of very senior people on LinkedIn, but it can still be there. I have a guy whose lowest bonus in the last 10 years was $2 million. It's just a little point to let you know he's pretty senior. That was his worst year in the last 10 years. And he was a little skeptical about the value of LinkedIn, and it's not as helpful as it would be if he were junior, but he found it very helpful because especially at smaller companies, there's a business development role, a value for people to be on LinkedIn, and more people are on, more and more senior people are on. And it can be very helpful to still find out information about companies. So you might want to be finding out exactly, junior people can still introduce you to people, they can still look up stuff, they can still do some due diligence. And there are a lot of senior people on LinkedIn as well. So he was sort of surprised at how helpful he's found it. I think I get one more question about photos. I'm a big fan of the photo for most people. If you're not photogenic or there's anything about your appearance that you think could detract, then I would say don't put a photo up. But I think if you can have a pretty attractive, smiling photo, people find it reassuring and are more likely to want to meet with you. I think it's important to realize it's a prejudiced world out there. And if you're just not all that, you're smarter than you are gorgeous, or you, for whatever reason, think that people's assumptions of your age or your whatever might be better without the photo, then I would say leave it off. But for most people, I think if they try hard, they can get a nice photo of them. And you don't always have to go, I certainly wouldn't get one professionally taken. Anyone can take one with a digital camera, and you can sometimes even have a photo where you just cut the rest of the scene out because it's quite a close shot on LinkedIn. So in general, I think they're good if you can get a good one. It looks like we're out of time, so we should wrap up here. So do we need to end at a fast start? Do you have anything that you want to say at the end?
No, we can actually end wherever you feel comfortable with ending.
Okay.
And I'll close it off after you finish.
I do want to. I do want to wrap up. Maybe I could answer one or two questions at the end, but I just want to follow up a little bit, which is to say that I very much encourage you to make the effort to get a good profile, to build up your LinkedIn account. I don't work for them. I'm not on their payroll. I just have, my clients have had so many success stories that had in some way LinkedIn played a part in them getting those jobs. And I also encourage you to make sure that you're really, in addition to leveraging Ivy Exec and similar resources, that you're really successfully leveraging the hidden job market. And if you're not having a few meetings a week, even if they're just networking meetings, and getting meetings at your target organizations, whether or not they have jobs, I think that you're not doing the most efficient search that you could do. And I really encourage you to get help through me or someone like me or some other source, your, the alumni career services at your schools, but you get help so that you're really getting a lot of meetings and you're chasing companies more than chasing jobs, or not just chasing jobs, as it were. And if anyone's interested in possibly working with me, feel free to reach out. And I really appreciate you guys taking the time tonight to learn more about LinkedIn, and I hope it's been a good investment of your time for you.
Great. And on behalf of Ivy Exec, I would like to thank Sarah for doing the presentation. And also, I would also like to thank everybody else who attended tonight. We are very privileged to work with Sarah as well. So we'll be making a link to the recorded webinar available in a follow-up email that we'll be sending off in a day or two. And in that email will include also Sarah's information. So if anybody else has a question, please feel free to reach out to Sarah directly. We'll make sure to put her email in there and the link to her website as well.
Would it be okay if I took 5 minutes after we signed off to just answer a couple of these questions right here at the end for people who want to hang on? Do you have access to the port for a little longer?
Of course, we can have.
But we can sort of officially end. But if people want to hang on and try and get their question answered, I can take another 5 minutes or so and shoot off some quick answers of my opinion, at least on these questions.
Perfect. There's no
I'll
hard
talk,
stop, so take your time. Okay, perfect. So for anybody else who wants to stay on, please do. And just to officially wrap up the webinar, I would like to thank everybody else for coming today. And on behalf of the Exec, have a good night, and I hope to see you guys on the next webinar. And Sarah, if you can please answer some of the questions, that would be terrific.
Okay. We don't officially have access, but my genius office manager here has somehow, I don't know, hacked in or something. I'm not sure how she's finding these, but I'm cracking up. So slow down a minute. Hold on. I'm laughing. She's scrolling through. Okay. One question that I'd like to cover is the next best site after LinkedIn to leverage your digital presence. That really depends on your industry. I think LinkedIn is it for traditional job search, and that everything else is of much lesser value for most people. However, depending on your industry, there could be some other things, and there's certainly it's not so much your web presence, but joining some industry-specific organizations, not the LinkedIn club or group of them, but the actual organization can be tremendously helpful depending on what you're in. But in general, I'm all about LinkedIn, and everything else is secondary. But for certain industries, people use Facebook professionally a bit more, and there certainly are exceptions to that. But I would start with I think LinkedIn is head and shoulders at this point the main one. The other thing I wanted to ask about the value of upgrading your account. For most people, I don't see a need for most people to upgrade their account. I've never upgraded mine. I've never really seen the need, because the whole idea of being able to reach people you don't know could be helpful, I suppose, but the whole point of LinkedIn is to get introductions to people. So if you don't know them, then you're just kind of contacting them cold anyway. It's better than nothing. So if that's the way you want to go, I think it's fine, but I would start with trying to get meetings through people you know and increasing your regular LinkedIn account connections as best you can and joining groups. So I've never had a need to pay a premium, but you could try it for a month. It's not that much money if you feel it would really help you in some way. Hold on a minute. Sorry, for some reason it's coming and going. So I talked about upgrading. So someone asked about if you're looking in a number of fields, how to handle that in terms of your LinkedIn profile. That's a tough one. It's the worst. The great thing about LinkedIn is its simplicity, but it's frustrating as well in that you have to pick a you. You can have several resumes, but you can only be one you on LinkedIn. So it's really a judgment call about how to set up your profile if you're looking in a couple of roles. I've seen people write some very skilled descriptions. I also encourage you to, if you're looking at more than one kind of job, to rank them in your order of interest and to figure out what is the thing type of job you most want to get, that it's a reasonable, you have a reasonable chance of getting, and go all out for that job. Just look at one target at a time, because I think your search will go better regardless of the LinkedIn aspect. Someone asked about highlighting non-job related interests on LinkedIn. I don't think it's necessary, and I don't think it adds anything, but maybe if it doesn't hurt either, I suppose. So it depends on what it is, to be honest. So if you if you ran the marathon in some killer time that might impress people, that's great. Or if you're in the Olympics, definitely put it on. If it's just kind of random, I like to travel and read and watch TV, I don't think it adds anything. But I would more focus on the business side of it and the traditional networking more than anything else in your profile. and to build up your connections as a main way to focus. I'm kind of cracking up because our access to these questions keeps dying. So I think that's pretty much everything. Please let me know if you need any, if you might be interested in setting up an appointment. And also, I very much encourage you to seek out other sources of help on the hidden job market as well. Anything else? Okay, well, I'm going to sign off now, and I hope you all have a great night. Bye-bye.
All right, good night, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Good night.